So installment number 6 from the video series I did about 1,000,000 years ago. My goodness, yeah, somebody just messaged me. I've started putting up a sort of video series about a bike that I built last year in 2016, and somebody in the comments, Carl, mentioned that he's still waiting for episode 6. And this was in reference to a video series that I did back in 2011 or 2012, something like that, which was me having the having the brilliant idea of taking a CB 404 and putting in a GS 500E engine. So that's an old frame from the 70s with a modern reliable motor. That was the idea. Ill-fated bike that it was. And I did this video series, and I didn't finish them. I never got round to finishing the last few, really. I can't even remember where I got up to. I haven't watched them in ever, and I don't really remember them. But however, apparently, as there are people out there wanting conclusion from that to see what on earth happened to it. Did it live? Yes, it did. It did indeed live. And not only did it live, but it got me all the way to Germany and back. Why didn't I finish the videos? Well, I honestly can't remember, but I think that it was down to time, as these things often are. I have always been the guy that builds a bike to do an adventure on every year, or whenever I can, as many years as I can, which would always be a European trip, and we would decide a rally that we're going to go to, normally one in East Germany, the other side of Germany. I would then throw a bike together, and at the last minute just finish tightening up the last couple of nuts and bolts, and off we would go. And this was no different. This is why I was doing it, if I recall correctly. And as it got towards the end, I was just running out of time. It was eating into the days when we should have set off. And worse still, as we did set off, the bike started having epic problems. I can't remember what the hell it was. It had some sort of fueling issue, and it would... I tested it, don't get me wrong, I tested it sort of up and down the street and around the block and everything else, and it seemed absolutely fine. But the minute it started to warm up and you got sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles from the house, it broke down, brought it back. And this is all during the time we're supposed to be setting off. We've booked the ferry, we're supposed to be heading down and getting the ferry to France. So it's broken down, and I've come back and taken the carbs apart and stripped them all down, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with this thing. I try something, I put it back together, it seems better, seems like it's running fine, gets us all the way the other side of Nottingham, breaks down again, and then it got us all the way to down towards Loughborough, and it broke down again, and then it got to Leicester and it broke down again. And I'm just thinking, oh goodness. And by we, I mean me and one of my best friends, Fez, who I used to tour with. And God bless him, if it wasn't for him, I never would have done that trip. This thing is breaking down again and again. It's his holiday as much as mine. He's booked time off for this, and he's done all the stuff you've got to do when you go for a sort of 3-week trip. And this thing is breaking down constantly. I feel horrible because I'm letting him down. Nobody wants to let down their best mate. And throughout all this, he just refused to leave. I'm like, dude, just go. I'll catch you up later. I'll meet you down at the ferry. He's like, I'm not leaving you. I'll get the kettle on, you know. I'll take it apart. You take it apart. I'll make us a brew. You'll figure it out sooner or later. I'm not going. And no matter how many times this thing broke down, he wouldn't leave. He just stuck by me the whole time. And if it wasn't for him standing there and telling me again and again that I can do it, it wouldn't have happened. And it's not the end of the world. It's a holiday, you know, these things happen. But I would have been heartbroken because I'd have let him down, I'd let myself down, and this was after months and months of building this thing. I was building this thing for ages. I've gone through all this grief of trying to get it to run. I would have been devastated if after all that work it hadn't worked out, but it didn't go. And because of him, I persevered. I found that last little bit of me that kept going, and we got that damn thing running. Oh God, was I happy when it ran. And yeah, we rode to Germany on it. And yeah, so here it is. Here are the pictures. I'll carry on talking. I found some pictures on my hard drive, and I found a little bit of video that somebody took of me riding the thing. The video isn't great, you know, things weren't great back then. Nobody could afford, I don't think anyone could afford a decent GoPro back then. So here are the pictures, here are the video. I'll carry on talking. So where did we get up to? Yeah, so I've set off on this thing that vaguely resembled a bike, and I can't remember a lot of this trip, but I do remember bits of it. I remember the breaking down, and I remember Fez just standing up for me, and I remember about half an hour after I set off I realised that the front forks were pretty much solid. I don't know what had happened to them. I might have changed them. Maybe the ones that were on it I noticed were bent or something. I swapped for some other ones at the last second. I can't remember, but they were near as damn it solid. And so I was riding a bike with no front suspension, and the rear suspension I was very kindly given by another friend of mine, Tomo. I think he swapped me for some bits and bobs or something, and we did a bit of a swap, and we got these really nice Hagon shocks. But what I didn't take into account, I didn't know any better back then, was that they have different ratings for different weights of bike. And these were off a massive heavy bike, and I'm putting it on a little tiny Honda with an inline twin in it. It doesn't weigh anything. So I've set off on a bike with solid front and rear suspension, and I'm just like, too dumb to know any better. I'm like, yeah, whatever, I can ride anything I can. And as you go on in life, you learn things, you know. It's all just a learning process. And it wasn't until we got, if you've ever ridden in Belgium, you'll know how bad their roads can be. And I remember being out there, bad roads and horrible weather for some reason. I always hit really bad rain in Belgium, regardless of what time of year I go, regardless of what the rest of the weather's like in the surrounding countries. I always hit, it's always like 10 degrees colder and rain, I swear it is. And I remember sitting on this thing on the motorway in Belgium, because we're so far behind, we're having to take motorways. I'm on this crappy old thing from the 70s with this engine bodged into it, and we're on the motorway hitting all these bumps, and I'm just like hanging on for dear life. This thing's got no suspension, and I'm just hitting, the motorways are full of potholes over there. Well, they were when I were that year. And the rain's hammering me from one side of the motorway to the other, and we can't see anything. We both wear glasses, so it's got dark, and if you wear glasses and you're in the rain and you're on a bike, you're not seeing very much of anything. I can't see. It's shaking like hell. The wind's slapping me in the face like a right hook. I just sit there thinking, what the hell am I doing with my life? I live and breathe bikes. I love bikes to bits. They've given me, I don't know about you, but they've given me some of the happiest and most trying, as well as the most trying times in my life. And that one, you really had to dig deep for that whole trip, the breakdowns leading up to actually getting going. Once we were on, once we were away, that was it. It didn't break down again the whole trip. But just getting out there, just getting going, and everything else, and then to find out it rode like absolute arse. Oh God. But we got there and we got back, and yeah, these are the things you, as I am now, look back at and laugh. So those were the pictures. That's the little bit of video footage that I've got. I hope you enjoyed it. It did actually live. And now the frame, when we got back, I don't know if I mentioned this, I've done like 5 takes and I can't remember what I've mentioned. When we got back, I was so sick of it, I was so fed up with it, that I just said, that's it, I'm going to take it apart and used it for other stuff. I think I sold the engine and used the wheels on something else. The frame then sat in my cellar, which used to flood every year in my old house. It sat in the cellar for a number of years soaking wet, and it came out pretty gnarly, and yeah, that was what happened to that one. So now you've got a conclusion, kind of, sort of.